All right, on today's episode, we interviewed Kristie Shifflette, where we really did a deep dive into what it's like to go from corporate America, start your first franchise, and then scale that franchise, have a big exit, and kind of what it looks like to go into private equity after that. All of the ups and downs that brings, right? And the story, Kristie kind of stumbled into Orange Theory, right, which is the franchise she picked, grew that first one, saw the potential, and then got really systematic about growing to 13 locations and made a big exit. So, Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
It doesn't really matter where you start. It's how you finish. And, one of the things, you can start with a franchise. You could go buy a business. You can start a business. All of these things that we talk about in our podcast are about entrepreneurship. And so, it's not always just about acquiring a business. But you'll hear in her journey that she dealt with just the same challenges you would if you bought a business, because ultimately she ended up acquiring businesses. And then ultimately she dealt with private equity, which everybody wants to have that exit that day. She rolled in her equity. She then took that and she grew. And then she had her own challenges, right? And so that's the life of an entrepreneur. There's a life of an acquisition entrepreneur. It doesn't matter who it is. And so I was completely inspired. I thought this was a very good podcast. And I thought that, her story is outstanding.
Yeah. And I'm a high energy guy and she's a very high energy person, right? And that's a lot of times what it takes to be an entrepreneur, right? It's not just about sitting back behind a keyboard, running spreadsheets, about getting out there. And we kind of talked about what sales looks like and how critical they are to a business, and how she kind of got ahead of that and having the big pre-sale, right? So that way, day one, she's opening the franchise and she's profitable within that first month, which is the big goal. And so lots of interesting takeaways in this one.
Hey there, this is Casey with the M&A Launchpad Podcast. I want to let you know about October 25th. Put it on your calendar. This is a do not miss one-day event. There's going to be incredible headliners, but really at the end of the day, you're going to get a chance to talk to people that have made acquisitions, learn from some of the challenges that they've made, because this is definitely a challenging process. But more importantly, there's going to be people there that can help you and support you along the way, from great vendors, quality of earnings, how to run the due diligence process, and how do I get financed? How do I raise capital? How do I structure all of these things? October 25th in Chicago, we're going to be gathering. It's going to be hundreds of people that are all focused, like-minded people. And man, everyone that's come has given us incredible feedback. So mark your calendar, October 25th in Chicago. We look forward to seeing you.
All right. Hey, Kristie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Likewise, excited to hear about your journey. We got a little bit of a sneak peek before the show, but for those listeners, you want to just give the 1,000-foot overview?
Sure. So, my story is I started as an Orange Theory Fitness franchisee and area developer, meaning I had the rights to a territory, and my mandate was to grow and open a certain number of locations within a certain time period. And I could choose to do those myself, or I could sort of sub-franchise them out to another owner. And so I, not having any experience in business ownership or, business operations. In my previous life was corporate America. I opened one. It was the hardest thing I ever did. The first store opened in January of 2014. And I quickly realized, okay, this is profitable from day one. Let's keep doing this.
And let me pause you really quick. So you came from corporate America. You got this crazy idea at the time to go start a franchise. You did the franchise seminar. I think Orange Theory 2014. When were they founded?
So they were like 2010, 2011, and then they paused on development and then started again. So I think
it's very new, right? And
very new. I think, yeah. So my first store was maybe number 70.
Yeah. So how did you find out about it? And then, you went to clearly the franchise meeting where they kind of walk you through it. And how many locations, right? For those listeners that don't know a lot about franchises, you really sign up for locations that are very well defined up front, and there's certain agreement around how many you can buy and how quickly you have to set them up. And so how did you find out about Orange Theory, and kind of how did that intro franchise meeting go? And, did they, what did you do at the beginning, right? Did you sign up for one? Did you sign up for 10, right? What did that look like? So.
Well, so it's funny. I was saying that during my time at Corporate Executive Board, I had this entrepreneurial itch, and I went through essentially a 2-year journey after I had 2 kids back to back, really, and knew that I wanted something more. I wanted to build something, and I didn't know whether it was a brick and mortar, a virtual business. Did I have to invent something? I wasn't sure, but I went through some personality assessments. I met with a franchise consultant, which is somebody that basically connects potential franchisees with a franchisor. So going through that process helped me identify the types of businesses I would be a good fit for and those that I wouldn't. And although he did not introduce me to Orange Theory, I had learned about what the franchising world was like. Fast forward, I was close to signing with a membership-based massage concept. And I went to a bachelorette party in New York City where one of my former college roommates was developing Orange Theory with her then boyfriend. And so I am now at the finish line of trying to figure out what I'm doing next. She tells me all about Orange Theory. And within 20 minutes, I had decided, this is what I have been looking for. This is exactly what I need. This is what it is. So I went, on my way to the airport to leave New York, I called my husband. I said, I found the business that we're going to invest in. I need to get down to the headquarters and make sure that I get this territory. I don't know what it means to be an area developer, but I need to have it. So I went down to Orange Theory. Different from the other franchise experiences where I had been courted and sort of wined and dined and you should come into this system. I felt like it was the opposite, where I was going down. I was not going to take no for an answer. I didn't exactly know what I was signing up for other than I wanted it all and I wanted a big territory. And so I went down there and had them shake hands saying, all right, you've got the area developer rights to half the state of North Carolina. And so that's how it started.
You said half of the state, or to have the state?
Half of the state. They divided divided the state into the Charlotte metro and then basically the rest of the state.
Which is, I mean, in hindsight, that's a great opportunity, right? Because now you probably, if you start an Orange Theory, you're getting a very micro specific 5-mile radius kind of thing, right?
Correct. So that's kind of the advantages of being early to a franchise, right? Is to be able to take on that area opposed to just one location or 2 locations.
That was what was important to me. I needed to have control over an area. I did not want to be a Me Too product like a membership massage where you had, lots of different ideas and brands already in the market. 10, 12 years ago when I started with Orange Theory, boutique fitness was really new. Yeah. And so that appealed to me. I wanted something that was different. And, like I said, that I had control over the development, and that it wasn't going to fracture the market by having multiple owners in a small space.
Got it. So you got the entire territory. How quickly did you have to open up stores? What was kind of the deal up front?
The development schedule, if I'm remembering correctly, was maybe 5 locations in 10 years. Okay. And so
it's not bad.
Very lax.
I think that they might have done that differently looking back, but I blew past that. So, got 2 open in the first 12 months and it kind of quickly went from there.
Did you do them, I guess really quick, did you do them in tandem or did you do the first one, saw that, hey, this is profitable day one, it's kind of a no-brainer, and you quickly did the second one? Or did you roll the dice and just say, I'm going to do 2 up front?
Well, the way it worked was really based on real estate availability. I knew that for this concept, I needed an A+ location. I needed to be in a center that had great daily use and good co-tenancy and easy parking, good accessibility, great customer demographics, in that radius. And so as I was going through the real estate searching process, I found I kind of had a pipeline built up. And so as a good location became available, it was a bit of a gamble. Like that's a great location. I'm maybe not quite ready for it, but I can't let that location go. And so my personality is more like, let's do it and we'll figure out the hard part later. And so
ready, fire, aim.
What's that?
It's ready, fire, aim.
Exactly. I think that being an entrepreneur, that's sort of, you have to be comfortable with that. And that was one of the things that I learned early on. It's like, all right, if this is what I'm doing, we're going to go for it.
Got it. And then, so you got them opened, right? How did marketing look like? Because now everybody knows what Orange Theory is. It kind of self-markets, right? How was it early on, right? You had to explain this boutique concept that nobody probably knew. And so was it pretty easy to get traction in these stores early on, or were you having to really spend a lot of time to get that going?
It was not easy. There was nothing about this that was easy, I will say. So people heard Orange Theory and they thought it was an ice cream store, maybe Orange Julius.
First time I heard about it, I was like, it's an ice cream place. Yes.
Exactly. That's what people, so, or they thought it was a cell phone company or something like that. And so what the way that it really was successful out of the gates was a very cohesive pre-sales process. And so part of the playbook, and this is, I think franchises, there's pros and cons. One of the benefits that I just subscribed to was I have this operational playbook. I'm just going to execute it better than anybody. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't need to say, oh, I can do it better. I can do it different. Like, let me just take this playbook and let me run with it. And so there was a 12-week pre-sale process that basically went in conjunction with the build out of the store. So while the contractors are getting the thing polished and open and built, I was in the parking lot with a tent, with wearing an orange suit, bouncing orange balls and approaching people. And I think since I'm a girl, it wasn't quite as creepy, but I would run up to people in the parking lot and say, hey, what do you do for fitness? Hey, have you heard of Orange Theory? And so I was able to get people to commit and sign up as pre-sales founding members so that by day one, the credit cards all ran and you're profitable. So big fan in the pre-sales process. And
had you been in sales before?
Yes.
Okay. So that skill set's probably on the personality style to be able to do that. That takes somebody that has been in sales, right?
Well, I think it doesn't hurt. And it also just takes this little bit of swallowing your pride, swallowing your ego, knowing you look silly, knowing you're going to get rejected and being okay with that. You're going to get some no's. And for a salesperson, a no just means not yet, or you haven't quite convinced me, but I'll come right back to you. So there was a lot of that. It wasn't easy, and I didn't really look forward to it, but I knew this is how I'm going to be successful, and that I had that desire just a little bit more than the ick in going through that process.
And how many people did you have on day one signed up?
So the goal was to get 300 on day one. Now, in a 12-week process, right, you might get all these people to sign up, but then when you go to run the credit cards, there's a lot that decline or people move or people get mad that you charge them, So when the dust settles, it's sort of like, what is that break even? And I think that I was just shy of 300 in that first opening, and then within the 30 days, I was able to recover all those and get past, maybe like 350 or so. Whereas in the second location, I achieved what was the sort of the celebrated 500 club, where you have 500 paying recurring members 30 days post opening. And that's really the trajectory that, it's like a rocket ship and sets you up for success.
Those are about 150, 175 a month. Is that about what the memberships ran? Or are they I know when I did F45 in 18, that was about my monthly, about 150, 175.
Yeah. So we had like the premier, the unlimited membership, and then 2 levels down. Right. And so that unlimited membership, I think when we first started was $159 a month, but the benefit to a pre-sales member is it's down to like $129, and cool. That you get that as a lifetime, benefit for as long as you stay a member.
Right. The reason why I asked, that's just a great recurring right off the bat, right? So by the time you're done with construction, doors open, that you've got 500 people, at least in your second location. So now you're go forward from there.
Exactly.
And how many people break even?
Back then I would say less than 300. So
now you've got, so kind of like flash forward, right? As you start to scale this business, you get 2 locations, they're cash flowing, right? So now, are you self-funding the next development? Are you able to take that cash and open, or do you have to go get financing? How does that trigger work to start scaling and growing?
So the first location, I used an SBA loan, which was the most horrific process. And I was just committed to never have to go through that again. The second location was so soon after the first that I didn't have time to really self-fund it. I had the fortunate friends and family situation that helped fund that second one. And then by the time the third one came around about a year later, both the proceeds from those first two were funding the third. And
Nice.
then from then on, there was no more debt required, and was able to, pay back that loan as well.
That's beautiful. I have a friend of mine that did the eyelash, all the eyelashes. They did that. And he said within 6 months of opening their first location, they were able to start opening other locations off that cash flow. He said it's amazing how these franchises that have a good concept, that have that monthly recurring, man, they can scale quickly if you've got the skills, if you've got the go to do it.
The monthly recurring is the way to go. And also, I would say the best sort of aha that I had was that Orange Theory Fitness, and I would argue any business, any franchise, any business, number one, it's a sales business. Number two, it's a people development business. Number three, it's a fitness product. And so where I saw my peers struggle and those that succeeded sort of either reverse those orders and really focus strictly on the fitness and we're a little short-sighted on the sales process. And I found that if I could really focus on sales and developing the people that were interacting with my customers, with my members, then that would fuel everything else. The fitness product was great. Let that happen. We just need to get the people in to experience it.
No, and it's a common dilemma, right? I mean, my background is software, and I had a software company, and it failed because as good as you might think the product is, we didn't really understand the sales and marketing strategy and plan to really get customers. And I wholeheartedly believe that most businesses need to start with sales first, right? And how does that work? Because you can give a mediocre product if you can sell it correctly and build the culture correctly, right? People will accept a mediocre product, then you can improve the product later, right? So
that's exactly right.
All right. So flash forward. So we go from 2 locations in 1 year, right?
In 2014.
In 2014. And then you've scaled them over to 40. You had over 40 locations before you exited. Is that correct?
I had 13. I was opening up 11, 12, and 13 when I sold the majority of the business to private equity.
Okay. So when did private equity show up?
What year was that?
2018.
Wow.
So we started the process in
3.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So we scaled pretty quickly in those, right? That 4 or 5 years.
So about 3 years.
4 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah. And so I did acquire one of the locations of that 13 from a franchisee who I had sold the one. He had opened it and then wanted out. So I ended up buying that one. And so, but, it was when I was after having 8 or 9, and I had a fortunate conversation with a friend of mine who was also an entrepreneur and had built and scaled a big business. And, he said, I think you guys are onto something here. I had been so laser focused just on one foot in front of the other, get the store opened, get the pre-sales, sell the memberships, get the next store open. I hadn't picked my head up to see wow, this is actually a pretty magical thing we have here. We have, profitable studios from day one. They're all self-funded. There's no debt on the business. And so that was where the idea came. Let's sell. I had all my eggs in one basket, right? And my husband joined in at studio number 6. So he left his job and we were in this together and thought, if we can take some chips off the table, maybe now's a good time.
So it sounded like you were just hyper focused on the finding the location and getting the pre-sales in. Who was running these things, right? And how involved were you on that side? Did you have a trusted kind of lieutenant that was handling the operations, or was that your husband, or was that you?
It was all of the above. It was none of the above. It was hard. It was hard to get a good system. But it was at about studio number 6 where I realized I need some layers between, if I'm going to keep growing, I can't be doing all of this, right? And the studios were suffering, my team was suffering. I couldn't do a good job at anything without having some key support. So did bring in some regional managers who then oversaw the studio. Each studio had a manager and a head coach. And those studio managers needed guidance. They needed support. They needed development. They needed all that. And so there had to be a layer in between.
Was that structure taught to you by Orange Theory, or were you one of the bigger franchisors at the time?
So yeah, the idea of each store having a head coach and a studio manager was the recommended approach. There were some stores that had a dual head coach and studio manager. There was a lot of playing around, or maybe one manager could cover two studios. And so, early days, it wasn't necessarily tried and true, but we quickly realized each store needed a manager. That person, I hired that person to be an owner of the store. I was looking for ownership mentality because I knew that I wasn't able to be there physically or even, remotely as much as that store would need. And so that was how I hired for the studio managers. And then we were also, to answer your question, one of the quicker to grow and scale. And so there was a lot of phone calls with my peers in the system, in the Orange Theory system, to say, well, how are you managing this? How are you building your team? What does your infrastructure look like? And so it was a lot of trial and error. But finding, getting that regional manager layer in and like a regional coach layer was really what we needed in order to continue that growth.
And I would also say it also probably led for you when you exited for them to be like, hey, it's not just you doing the business, right? You've built a team. So when we buy you, we can continue that on, right? That was probably a big selling point of what you did.
Big selling point, right? So this is not a business that's dependent on me. No ego involved, right? If I can just create a system that is repeatable and that works, and I can show that my team is capable of executing that with a little bit of leadership, then that I think is seen as valuable to a potential buyer, and it shows them that there's meat on the bone for the continued growth going forward.
Yeah, and that plays out in all these businesses. And so for a lot of our listeners, you could say, hey, I'm not interested in a franchise. I'm trying to buy a company. And, you're going to find that, if you're buying a business or starting a business and you want to eventually have an exit, they are not trying to buy you. They want to buy a system. They want to buy a business. They want that recurring revenue, whatever that is. Yeah. And so having that mindset of, hey, I'm getting the ego out of the way. I'm going to put in systems and process. I'm going to develop great people. And I'm going to put this business where, obviously I can get it in a place to sell it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And certainly not wanting to be beholden, right? Where you're signing up for, years and years and years because it is so dependent on you. That was another one of my motivators. I wanted to have some more free time. I had been spending a lot of time, a lot of hours. And so I was like, I got to.
And your kids are probably what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that range?
So young. Yes.
Got it. All right.
They're like, where's mom?
And so then tell us about kind of how that sell conversation went, right? Who, you mentioned you were talking to a friend. Did they come back and say, hey, what do you think about us buying the whole thing? I mean, kind of how did that go? And ultimately, whenever it came down to valuations, how'd you guys start talking through that?
So we hired and we interviewed investment bankers to run a process. So we decided to run a formal process, interviewed a bunch of bankers. We ended up with an amazing partner in Fifth Third. And so they were so professional. They were so, they were just people you wanted to like have a drink with, and they really got us and they really saw the value. And so once I trusted them in running that process, it was probably the most fun part of the journey was that year where we went through, we put the book together, the sim and all that. And we had management meetings. We had 7 or 8 different potential suitors come in and sit with us. And we got to share, this is what we've done. This is our vision. This is what we think the business is capable of. Here's the trajectory. And it was just so much fun. And so it was during that time that we started to see, okay, who could we really see ourselves partnering with? And so, the bank, Fifth Third, received the IOIs, then the LOIs. And from a valuation standpoint, it far exceeded that engagement letter that we first signed with Fifth Third.
Nice.
And so it was beyond anything that I even dreamed of when I marched myself down to Fort Lauderdale to sign on as the area developer. I didn't know what the future was going to be or how the exit would look, but it was very rewarding to see. There's a lot of really smart guys out there that are willing to pay big money for what we've done.
And perfect timing too, because private equity had entered into the fitness, because they saw the recurring models, right? And so great timing, because obviously you had COVID coming in the few years ahead of you. You wouldn't have known that, but it was like, man, right at a great time.
That worked out well in hindsight. Yes.
Awesome.
And question, so 13 location, what was your EBITDA? Did you even track EBITDA? Did you know what EBITDA was? Right. And then at the same time, what was the bank thinking the multiple would be versus kind of where it ended up going? Right. How much was that discrepancy?
Yeah. So we did track I got really into the numbers, and that to me, that was how I could really execute on the sales, is to see how each store performed and how it all worked. So yeah, we were tracking, top line, we were, over, eight figures. And really our margins were solid, like just shy of maybe between 35 and 40% four-wall EBITDA. So, it was working. Now, not every store was performing the same, but on the whole, to show that that's what the business could do. And so, the multiple for these individual stores is obviously different from what having the rights to a larger area and having that white space that increase the multiple. So, gosh, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I think we were maybe 7 to 8 times EBITDA was what it was, kind of that target. And we exceeded that just a bit, and, came out far better.
Like sold.
Well, and also it's actually the 13 locations in the grand scheme of things in a big market like, the one you mentioned. I mean, you could probably stick 50 stores in there, right, at full capacity. And so I think they're running the numbers of, well, hey, here's how we scale it. And, you have a system to support them being able to just fund the build outs to scale the rest. And that's the opportunity for them, right?
Well, not only that. So yes, indeed. So opening up new locations within our footprint was one way to grow it. But the other that they saw that I hadn't even entertained yet was through M&A, through acquiring other areas. So people that were also developers the way that I was, but maybe were a little smaller or didn't want to stay on and build a platform, right? And so that was where the fun started, because I had some, great relationships within the Orange Theory system. My husband is 17 times more likable than I am. So he helped with having some really amazing relationships too. And so when we got the green light and we had all this dry powder, it was so much fun to go to some of my friends, frankly, in the system and say, hey, do you want to hitch your horse to our wagon? Like, we look at what we can do. And so we were able to grow pretty quickly that way by signing on some other areas and acquiring, so that we then had, the acquisition of existing studios, but also the additional white space within those regions as well.
So I take it, just in your sale process, you had to stay on. Did you roll in some equity? Is that kind of how it is? So you got your purchase price, you rolled in some equity.
Or was it an earn out or both? Kind of, what did the post-sale process, what did the deal look like, and what happened after the sale?
Yeah. So we had a small earn out, and I want to say it was like maybe $1.5 million, was the earn out. And yes. So I started the sales process, this whole, thinking like, I won't be offended, right? If somebody wants to buy this business and thinks they've got a better operator, that's cool. I can be okay with that. But as we were going through the conversations, through management meetings, and through this, 6-7 month process, I realized the value that I would bring, and that actually we would get a greater valuation if I stayed on. And so then we pivoted our vision, our story, to say, hey, I can lead this platform and I can help grow it, scale it really quickly. And so that it was sort of, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing. And so that's how that all happened.
Nice. Because now all of a sudden they want you. So you built the management team, you've got scalability, you've got systems and processes, but now that icing on the cake is that they get you to help them continue building and scaling the business. So it became a very nice package. So from the time of closing with the new private equity group, y'all went from 13 stores. What did y'all end up going to in that growth?
Yeah. So we went to 40 locations. We got 4 states. So we acquired 3 additional areas. And we continued to open up a few other stores within our existing footprint, but really grew more through acquisitions. Built out a true infrastructure for like the management company. So, as many of your listeners probably understand, that private equity involvement means they really want a very sophisticated finance function, and not like the, duct tape and chewing gum spreadsheets that we were using as a bootstrap sort of business. Like, hey, I don't know, it's making money and I don't know, it just somehow is. So, that was one of my first mandates really was let's build out the team. Let's build out an infrastructure. So we hired a CFO, and we got into a rather regular cadence of board meetings and whatnot. I got a salary, a proper salary for the first time. That was pretty fun.
Nice.
And then got some money to play with. And so that was how we really started approaching these other area developers to say, hey, let's see if this would work for you to be part of our company was OT Growth Partners, and so we were able to get a few signed on right away. One came a little bit later. And then as COVID was happening, we were moments away from signing a really transformative deal. And we're already starting our process to sell again. So the idea was before the election in 2020, we were going to be sold and have that second bite of the apple and ride off into the sunset. But things changed that year.
Got it. And so it sounds like you did get to keep equity in the new company, right? So you did get to roll some of the equity as well.
Yes. So 30% we kept, and then the rest was awesome. The private equity. Yep.
Oh, cool.
So in that, and we'll just recap here before we jump on to your next what you're doing. But in that, so you're saying in COVID, what happened? Did it all fall apart? Was it a smaller exit? What ended up happening?
It largely fell apart, unfortunately. So, every state handled things differently, as you probably remember. We were forced to be closed in North Carolina, where the majority of our studios were, for an exorbitant amount of time. So, 6-7 months where people's habits change, their exercise habits change. There's this new proliferation of other boutique fitness. And so all the competition that existed before, which were little like ankle biters, they were legit, but they weren't enough to really, derail our model, suddenly did. Right. And so then it was just, as we were able to reopen, it was this idea of recovery, of how can we try to get back those members that we lost. And it was a couple years in where we finally saw this is not recovering. And I don't want to use this time to point fingers, but there are limitations when you are part of a franchise. You are somewhat limited in what you can and can't do. There weren't ways to be creative. There weren't a lot of ways we could do our own marketing. So we were a bit hamstrung in that sense. And so after a couple of years, I decided, you know what, this business is no longer growth partners. That was me. I was the CEO that was growing the business. What this business needs now is somebody that has different skills, different interests, and, and is able to really handle keeping the business afloat, having lots of processes, being able to support 500 employees in all these different locations. But if there's no growth, I'm ready to go on to something else. And so we found a CEO to replace me, and they kept going.
Awesome.
Hey, that's good to know, like who you are and what you are. And it kind of brings to the point for our listeners, there is a growth mentality in a business. You run a growth is hard. Growth is stressful. Growth is all of these things. But there's also that personality type that knows how to come in and maintain, cut cost, start getting into that other side, which isn't as fun. It is really, man, we've got to squeeze this thing. We got to squeeze this turnip to get it out. And so you got to have all those personalities in a growth of a business, because it sounds like, hey, we grew to the extent we could. COVID knocked us down. Now we've got to rebuild, but we've got to cut cost and we got to get this thing. And that is, for a growth CEO, that is a painful conversation.
Very painful. And also to not be in control of my own destiny in the way that I had been to date was very challenging for me. And I started to just not be a person that I was liking. I was like, this is not how I want to be. I'm angry all the time. I'm bitter and I'm resentful. And this isn't what my business needs. And I want to go on to something else. And so I think that having that self-awareness served me well in that instance, to say, I could keep holding on and fighting and clawing. And, but again, I was okay with letting go. I was afraid my equity would probably maybe not even be worth much. And unfortunately, it really is so far buried at this point. And so I thought, if we find a great CEO, I will entrust that person to handle my equity and my investment better than I would. And I'm ready to do different things.
So did you end up taking some time off?
Yeah. What did you do after?
Did you take like a year, or did you take 6 months? And then what's the next journey?
So 6 months, traveled the world. We pulled our kids out of school. Cool. And it was, I think, my way of saying, okay, I can control something. And also F you to the world who kept us down and closed our stores. We're going to go and enjoy life, because we've worked our asses off. We've worked so hard. Let's go and enjoy the fruits of our labor. And so we had an amazing experience with our kids, traveling 23 countries in 6 months. And so that was an experience of a lifetime. And so coming back from that is really where chapter 2 is starting. And a lot of that was unknown to me, and it still is a work in progress, but there are a few things I'm working on.
Nice.
Anything to share with the listeners just to know what you're up to?
Absolutely. So I actually had to engage with an executive coach, because I thought that miraculously on this 6-month journey, something would fall from the sky and tell me, this is, Kristie, what your next chapter is meant to be. And for better or worse, it didn't. I was too busy enjoying things abroad. But so came back, and through some work with an executive coach, discovered that my real passion is in helping empower Americans. And maybe there's a little learning that I had from being abroad and seeing how the rest of the world eats and lives in a much more healthful way. And I wanted to come back and say, the American consumer is more empowered than we think when it comes to managing our own health, but we're overloaded. It is very difficult. So how can I help empower that consumer and that fellow American to say, all right, let's cut through this information overload. Let's cut through the noise. What are some tools that in a system that actually works to have true vitality, to have health and clarity and confidence about what we're doing going forward in this world of noise. And so there's 2 things I'm working on. One is I'm creating a clean sports drink for kids. I have been very dissatisfied. Yes, with the options that exist, and have, kids that say they're sick and they need Gatorade, or mom, bring snacks for soccer, make sure you get Powerade. And I'm like, I'm not getting that junk. And so there's nothing out there. So I'm in formulation now it's a clean, food is medicine, gut healing, electrolyte hydrating, and real fruit, real food, low sugar stick pack, a powder stick pack for kids. So that's in the works. And then the second thing is more of a platform for some education and tools and community for fellow midlife badass women who want to crush it in life and just need a little bit of a guide to help them navigate. So I'm going to use the 7-8 years of functional medicine experience that I've had, and the $100,000 that I've spent on self-experimentation and all these things, to hopefully help save people the time and the heartache and the cost, frankly, of trying to figure that all out and using the system that I've built.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff, and it makes a big difference in people's lives. It will.
I hope
that's
so.
Awesome. No, it will. It will. All right. So we're going to jump into our rocket round. And this is where we're going to ask Kristie 3 very important questions. So Feras, want to answer the first one?
First one. What do you like to do in your free time?
I love to travel. I love sharing experiences with the people that I love. So if I can't travel, then it's go over a meal. We love cooking, dining, eating out with friends and family, and really creating those memories through those experiences.
All right. Well, we'll pencil in a dinner next time we're, down in your neck of the woods. All right.
Yeah.
Come on
sure,
over.
Up, not down. All right. Next question. What's your most memorable moment in your business journey?
Selling the business that day when we had just had our third child. We were moving houses and trying to close. Of course, we engineered everything so that none of that would all happen at the same time. And it literally all happened on the same day. And so on November 8th, 2018, we have pictures of us with the moving truck and being on the closing call and seeing that money hit the account was the best day. And so we had a bottle of grocery store Dom Perignon, ordered takeout Indian food, and the best day of that journey.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's a clear one. All right. And the last question, favorite tool or resource?
I would say hands down, it's YPO. I'm part of this global networking group called Young Presidents Organization, YPO. And it has been such a powerful source of growth for me, from business and personal family dynamics. So whether it was, negotiating a deal or navigating these different leadership challenges, or even in now figuring out what I want to do next in life, just having that trusted peer-to-peer insight and that kind of confidential network, it's truly been unmatched.
Yeah, I mean, most entrepreneurs, right? You face a lot of challenges that your typical friends don't have, and it's good to have kind of a support network to just bounce ideas off of and figure out.
That. Yeah.
Hey, how'd you solve this problem, and how'd you do that? Or actually, my partner and I we were finalists for Entrepreneur of the Year, and it was just amazing to be in the room with some of the other guys. And one of them was basically suing, I forget the California electric company that started the big fire, right? Because that company owed them like $50 million. So how do you go through bankruptcy proceedings in a government-backed institution? I mean, these are like really weird things that none of your friends are going to be able to help you solve, but being in a room with the right people can help you move the needle forward. So I'm a big proponent of those groups.
So important. How do you start a beverage company? Help.
Definitely. Yes. Well, Kristie, it's been absolutely amazing hanging out with you today. If our listeners wanted to get a hold of you or find out more about your new business, how can they do that?
The best place right now would be email or LinkedIn. So I think they can find me there, and hopefully some proper websites will be up in the near future.
Awesome. And we'll put those in the show notes for people.
Wonderful.
That is great. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This was a great story, and excited about your next venture.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
We'll get you on once you get going. We'll get you on another year or two and see how it's gone.
Exactly. We'll have another conversation. I'll be back. Thank you guys so much for having me.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.